Okay, welcome everyone who's joining us. Going to wait a few minutes while everyone pops into the waiting room before we start introductions. If you come into the chat, you're welcome to pop in where you're calling in from today. We love to know our global audience, where everybody's calling in from. We're going to wait a few minutes before we get started. Oh, amazing. I see we're rolling in from India and Poland. Monique coming from Toronto. Welcome, hometown. Delaware. Hey, John. We got some more Arizona in the house. Fantastic. Beautiful. We'll give it another minute for us to let everybody enter, grab a glass of water. We're in for a great webinar called Going Beyond the Gym with Muse. Before we get into introductions, I want everybody to get settled. And if you're just joining us, pop in the chat where you're calling in from today. Ireland, welcome. Andre, Montreal. Yes. I've been meaning to get up to Montreal this summer. Such a beautiful place in the summer. Okay, I think we'll get started. So welcome everybody. This is Beyond the Gym, a webinar presented by Muse, the brain health platform, where we are unlocking the brain and revolutionizing health. Here at Muse, we are on a mission to advance mental, physical, and emotional health by combining neurotechnology and AI. My name is Sarah Evans. I'm a biofeedback integration strategist here at Muse and sidelining as your co-host in today's webinar. So first, I'd really like to welcome you all. I know it takes a lot to just take 45 minutes out of your day and come and attend one of these great sessions. I really hope that you get to take away the passion and some of the advanced techniques that we're about to share with you. We've got some fantastic guests today, two incredible guests. I really feel personally lucky that we get to share this space with them. These are true leaders in performance health, mental health, emotional agility, both on and off the field. So I'd like to just quickly introduce our guests. Michael Rabasca, Director of Cognitive Performance at LA Galaxy. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Michael, you've been the Director of Cognitive Performance with LA Galaxy since about 2021, leading the Cognitive Performance Department. You're supporting the first team's performance and managing the Academy of Cognitive Performing. And I've learned that before LA Galaxy, you're with the Toronto FC, which is where Muse is located, from 2014 to 2021, where you founded and led the Department of Cognitive Development, focusing on cognitive training for Youth Academy and the second team players. Maybe you can just tell me one or two sentences about, today, what you're passionate about in your job.
The passion is watching players achieve and fulfill their goals. Those little secrets they're sometimes afraid to share with everyone. I get some great insight into that and have a real passion for seeing those dreams and those secrets come true.
Oh, amazing. I love that. And welcome, Dr. Alex Auerbach. You are a performance psychologist and the CEO of Momentum Labs. Dr. Auerbach is a performance psychologist and firmly dedicated to bringing the best practices from pro sports to organizations everywhere. He's a former NBA executive working for the Toronto Raptors and has worked with athletes in the NBA, NFL, and Olympians. Dr. Auerbach has also worked with high performers in other domains, such as elite military, Fortune 500 companies, and venture-backed startups. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you both.
Yeah, and same question. Is there anything in this moment today that you're really passionate about in your line of work?
I think we need another webinar for just that, but I'm with Michael. There's something magical about getting to work with someone and watch them reach their full potential. And for me, it's figuring out how to make that accessible to everyone. I think very mission aligned with what you're working on at Muse.
I love that. Thank you so much. So the structure of this webinar, we're going to get into some questions with with Michael and Alex, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. But first, I've got to introduce the lovely Julia and Emma behind the scenes. They are live and direct on chat. We really encourage questions. We're going to get as many, we've got a lot of participants coming today. We're going to get to as many questions as we can, but please know that not only will you receive a recording at the end of this session, but we will also work to answer any of the questions that you dropped in the chat that we might not be able to address live. And at the end, if you stay to the end of this webinar, we have a great promotion for the webinar attendees, a discount code for one of our Muse devices, and an insider scoop on a metric we're developing and launching soon that will really impact cognitive and sports performance. So Julia has a poll for our attendees. We love to know who is here. We love to know more about you. It continually allows us to be in conversation with our product, with our customers, with those of you who are passionate about mental, physical, and emotional health. And so if you could take some time, it takes like 30 seconds to fill this out. We would love that just so we can continue to further our work. So Julia will pop it up on the screen there. And feel free to click the boxes that feel really good. Okay, so let's dive in. We've got lots to cover. I know I have a million questions, but we'll try and be organized about this. In general, I think we're in Olympic fever kind of globally. We also can, in this realm of mental and emotional health, we know that Olympic and sort of high stakes competitions in the realm that you folks are in, we know that success doesn't just come from physical health, but also mental health. So let's talk about some of those qualities of maybe pre-routines for how we develop not just sort of the physical abilities, but these mental abilities that allow for performative success. So I'll direct it to Michael first. What are you seeing so far in trends in the realm of mental performance and awareness, especially with professional athletes? And is there anything that has changed recently in that sort of like pre-routine realm of preparing to be an athlete?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question that, again, as Alex mentioned earlier, we could probably spend a whole webinar on pre-performance routines. You know, for us specifically, we've really got into defining the timeline for what is the pre-routine. And a major step forward for us is that it's not day of, it starts the moment they finish their practice the day before. And then a whole host of things, from what does your routine look like at home? And then what does it look like when you're on the road? What does it look like when you're leaving 2 days before? And what does it look like when you're actually on the plane the day before the game? So all of these types of little nuances. And then we kind of just work for us on a suite of options. Meditation is obviously one of them that is available to them, but the different forms of meditation, everything from visualization to clearing their mind to whatever they've practiced to be ready. For us, a big part is, one, to be disciplined about their routine, but then to also be prepared when their routine is disturbed, and to not feel like, well, disaster is coming because I didn't get to meditate 30 minutes before the game, or whatever that activation or pre-performance routine required. So just the more the planning, the honing, and really trying to meet their expectations, which is to allow them to have as good a performance as possible, and to really anticipate what those options for them will be.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I feel like I can really relate to that. And many folks I know, when we create these really beautiful and robust routines for ourselves and they get disrupted, it's a whole other skill to be that kind of agile with it. So yeah. And, you know, based on all of those aspects you mentioned, you know, here we are in this moment with performative health, mental health training. Where do you see it kind of going in the future? Is there any of those aspects that you see really needing to get developed more than where they are now?
Well, I think we saw in the Olympics some new ones, and it really is, I think, trending toward looking at the physiology, looking at the neuroscience to really have some numbers that might help us to understand how to advance each of these. So one of the nice things about Muse, of course, is you get some data, some feedback. And just because you didn't necessarily hit a number or something doesn't say bad performance. It just informs you of how to change it in the future. We saw at the Olympics, I think the popular phrase I'm seeing is facial manipulation. Now, facial manipulation in my world of, say, let's just say neuroscience, I feel like we're changing physiology. And if we change physiology, maybe we're doing something that is enhancing performance. I think the trend might be to better understand what physiological mechanisms we're actually striking, what we're impacting, and how that might impact performance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for that. Alex, you've just started a new company that focuses on mindset coaching for athletes. Can you tell me a little bit more about your business goals and how you're approaching mental fitness?
Our main goal at Momentum Labs is to make health and high performance accessible to everyone. And we believe mindset coaching, particularly with younger athletes, but executives everywhere, can help make this a part of what we do culturally, right? So right now, and this gets to some of what Michael was sharing about the Olympics, you've had this really long history in high performance of training your body, right? Everyone is doing physical training to get ready for the Olympics. And then in the last several decades, we've started to see and hear more about mental training, and some of the best athletes in the world have sort of pioneered that a little bit and made it a little bit more visible. So if you think about Michael Phelps, right, or Simone Biles recently talking about either mental health or mental performance, some of their pre-performance routines, it started to become a little bit more of a cultural norm. But what we don't really have is a systematic and structured way for getting those principles and practices from elite sport into the places where it can make a big difference, right? So people like Michael and myself in my last life work with these great athletes to help them think, feel, and perform their best consistently. And all pro athletes generally have access to a resource like that. But if you're an executive dealing with people's safety every day, or if you're a parent trying to figure out how you raise 2 kids under 2, like I'm struggling with right now, or if you're a young athlete trying to figure out how to respond more resiliently to pressures around getting cut or staying in the game or whatever it might be on your travel squad, you really don't have a great set of resources to deal with those challenges and to work on building the mindset skills, things like pre-performance routines or managing your physiology in the way the best athletes do. And so that's what Momentum Labs really started for. That's what it's all about. And that's where great partners and people like you and Muse come in, because I think, like Michael mentioned, there's a real need to measure, train, and look at other aspects of the mind and mind-body connection than just things like self-talk or pre-performance routines. There's other sets of skills like biofeedback, neurofeedback, and some of their adjacent training mechanisms like mindfulness that can be really useful for helping people consistently be their best when it matters most.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for that. And sort of in this world where sort of neurofeedback is such a buzzword, neurotechnology is such a buzzword, how do you decide, like, for example, when you might incorporate Muse or when you might incorporate any type of neurotechnology into your training?
For me personally, it's really about what helps the athlete stay engaged or the performer stay engaged with training over time. And one of the things I found when I introduced Muse to the Toronto Raptors was that it became something that they felt comfortable engaging with. And it was a little bit different than just doing something like sit there and pay attention to your breathing, right? It gives you metrics, it plays noises, it helps you sort of sync up in your mind, and it gives you a little bit more immediate feedback, and it's a little bit more interactive than, say, typical meditation might be. And so for me, it's really about helping it become a sticky training habit, right? And sometimes people are totally comfortable using no technology. Sometimes people need a little bit of an adjunct support. And then I think, as Michael mentioned, I agree. I think we're going to start trending toward this place of looking at data and the mind-body connection. So I think you're going to start to see a lot more stuff around HRV, resting heart rate, and how that links to someone's mindset. There was an interesting article done on Ronaldo and his physiological changes throughout a game during the most recent performance that he had. And I thought that was interesting to sort of track. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. And then I think, again, Muse becomes a part of something like that, where you're really trying to look at data to get a sense of how long is someone able to stay present, how often are they disrupted, how quickly do they come back to the present moment, real markers of someone's ability to stay focused, stay here, and ultimately attention is a big precursor to peak performance. And so I think that's going to be where we head.
I love that. That's so insightful. And you know, just to riff on that a little bit, I feel like I was an athlete in my youth, and when I started taking jobs in the food industry, I noticed that my focused attention, what it could be on the field, wasn't translating to some of my industry and how I worked in the industry. And so using some of the technology for me personally and like moving into like tracking actual focused attention and building that muscle really helped me personally. And I think that, yeah, to your point, Michael, it's all of these training things just coming at not just sort of when you're struggling, but you know, from the moment you're done training, you're gonna start thinking about it as a lifestyle, and whatever makes you comfortable sort of integrating these habits as a part of a lifestyle, I think is a key point here.
Yeah, I could build on that just a little bit, in the sense
Yeah.
that I don't meditate. I am a meditator, right? Like this idea of embodying that. We use technology in three ways in general. I mean, there's a lot, but in three ways, we'll use it as affirmation. So in this case, that you are actually, your brain waves are indicating they're in a place that you want them to be, right? So I kind of call Muse sometimes the gateway to meditation for our guys, because initially there's resistance. But then pretty soon, after about 20 sessions or so, less for some, more for others, they know I'm doing it. We also use it competitively for activation. So the idea that we're just going to waken this part of the brain up, that's before a training session, to maximize their actual performance during training or the game. And then the third way I'd say we use it is to build, to grow, to challenge. To sometimes make it difficult for them, and to see how they can come out on the other end. So in those three ways, I see, and I think the technology really works for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. Alex, do you have a comparable way that you sort of use Muse? Is it simply for focused attention training? Do you have other ways that you integrate it?
Michael's framework is much more neatly organized than mine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, yes, focused attention is a big part of it. And I think in general, I'm big, and we've talked a little bit now already about the mind-body connection and managing physiology. I think this is just another tool for thinking about how you train people to do that. And I think one of the benefits of having technology involved is you do get to see results in ways that you might not otherwise see if you were not using some technology to track it. So I agree with Michael that that's also a benefit. And I like the activation idea behind it. I mean, I think there's lots of good data to back up this idea that you can kind of warm up both physiologically, physically, mentally. And so I think using it that way is pretty clever.
Oh, 100%. And last thing with your comment, Michael, I found that for folks that I work with that have that bit of resistance towards meditation, since Muse has sort of moved into the direction of brain health, we actually train focused attention specific meditation. So the success marker of meditation in this capacity isn't actually a clear mind. It's a byproduct. But the success marker is, oh, hey, I noticed my mind was wandering. I brought myself back into focused attention, and I create that attentional loop over and over again. And that's a successful meditation with Muse. And so I feel like that has been a bit of a nuanced shift into how people perceive meditation as a tool to improve cognitive performance.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, in the sense that convincing a young man that meditation is useful for preparing for sleep and also for playing a competitive game. And so sometimes we have to help them with the language a little bit, because they've grown up in a world where meditation is meant to be calm and zen and peaceful. And you still can use all those words in competition. It's just shifting some of it to flow and clear-mindedness and directed purposefulness, things like this. And so there's a lot of education that goes on inside that to bring them around inside that. So it's an excellent point.
Yeah. Michael, you've been understanding the impact and importance of mental resiliency for quite some time. I might just shift to talk about that a bit. What has your area of focus been of late, and what are you seeing new in this world of mental resiliency?
I don't know that it's new. I mean,
Okay.
I think the ancient Stoics have been doing it for a long period of time. It's the frame of reference that we have to give some scaffolding and some words, some language that athletes can use. The big part for us is awareness, that they have to somehow start setting off their alarms or just bringing attention to when they're not maybe reacting the way they want to. And certainly meditation goes a long way. We've been able to start, we have a lot of athletes who are spiritual as well. And prayer is part of their regular routine and paying attention to prayer. So this idea of paying attention and awareness. And then for me, a big focus has always been on journaling. You can say it in your mind, but once it goes down on paper or in your phone, that's been a little bit of a battle, phone or actually writing things out. It becomes a different reflection and a different awareness. So I think that awareness, that journaling piece, reflection, I should say, rather than journaling, have been two cornerstones to really understanding, wow, I was upset when I went to the lunchroom and they didn't have chicken. Well, is that really a battle, right? And your reaction to that, and how can you build on that? It sounds really silly, but athletes start getting really finicky about their foods and their routines and all of these types of things. That just being aware of how they're reacting, how it's affecting the rest of their day, that moment specifically, have always been kind of the cornerstones for us.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I'm old school, so I need to write down everything. And we now know that it lights up different parts of the brain when you're handwriting something than when you're texting, and it has a completely different effect. And so I couldn't agree more there. Alex, do you have any sort of big challenges that you see when you're working, either with athletes or anyone in your field, in sort of anything in this awareness, whether it's resiliency or cognitive performance? What are your challenges right now?
Yeah, I typically break my kind of big challenges. I help people navigate into like 4 or 5 buckets. So the first is performance under pressure. I think regardless of what role you play, whether you're an athlete, parent, coach, someone else, you're always dealing with pressure in some form, whether it's your own expectations or expectations from someone else. And learning how to manage pressure effectively, I think, is critical and something we're often not really taught. I mean, even if you think back to your days in school, right? You're given a test, you're told that the test is really important, and no one bothered to teach you anything about how to manage that moment of taking a test, but they taught you what you were supposed to repeat back on the test itself. And so people need to develop these skills, things like how to appraise a stressor as a challenge versus a threat, how to consciously increase their effort, how to stay focused under pressure to perform a bit better. The second is teamwork. And you can think of teamwork as communication and leadership. So that's why I say kind of like 4 or 5 buckets. But how do you effectively work with other people? How do you support other people to become their best? How do you fit into a team? And even in things like individual sports, like maybe tennis or golf or boxing, you still have a team around you, right? You've got coaches, you've got supporters, you have people who are working to help you figure out how to be your best consistently. And if you, as the performer, even in those individual sports, are not good at working with other people, or not effective at communicating what you need, not resilient when something happens to you, right, your teamwork is going to suffer, and ultimately your performance is going to suffer. The third is decision making. And again, you can think of decision making in high stakes, high pressure situations. Like I've worked with elite military members who are trying to figure out how to defuse a bomb. That's a very real consequence if you fail or make the wrong decision. But you've also got decision making that's stressful, like figuring out what you're going to feed your kids for lunch when you're under time pressure, right? Or whether or not you want to go somewhere or not go somewhere with a busy family, or whether or not you're going to shoot the ball to the left or to the right if you're in Michael's world, right? All these decisions happen over different time scales, and people need skills to learn how to make decisions most effectively. And then finally, I'd throw in self-regulation, which is just this ability to really direct and control your thinking, feeling, and physiology, and learning to really be the master of yourself. And broadly speaking, we don't really get taught how to do this either. And so I think people often run into struggles, whether it's with willpower, or discipline, or consistency, or confidence, things that are related to self-regulation, that bring them into meeting with someone like me or with Michael to figure out how they can sort of navigate that challenge and be most effective. So those are the places where I find myself working most often.
Oh, that's incredible. I really want to write those are neatly categorized, Alex. That was great. And maybe just a quick, this is for both of you, but we have a lot of folks here who may not have picked up neurotechnology to help with cognitive performance or mental resiliency. When you first started introducing technology, maybe even Muse specifically, what was sort of like any prompts or anything that sort of got you over that first hurdle of introducing neurotech, or even Muse specifically into your practice? Any pointers there? Maybe Michael, I'll start with you.
I always use myself as an example. So it was always the case of I'm going to put this headset on in front of you and I'm going to show you how I do it, and not feel the usual responses of, oh, this seems silly or what. So yeah, showing that you're willing to do it first will always be part of it. The other thing was to make it real simple. Like, beginners didn't need to do 5 and 10 and 20 minutes. 3 minutes is often enough. Sometimes even just 1 minute, just so that they can start to see what things look like on the other end and what the conversation, the coaching will look like right after it. It's always that age-old wisdom: keep it simple, and then the last word, right? And that's really it. It's just keeping it simple, little steps. Our program that we've written up for our players starts with like 3-minute meditations for 7 to 10 sessions, and then we build them up to 5 minutes, and then 7, and then 10. And then pretty soon, it's very rare that our players are still in the 10-minute prescriptive meditations that we have. They often are ready to fly there on their own. And the next challenge after that is where to use it and when to use it, to start to develop a practice, if you will, of the routine. Am I going to do it before practice? Am I going to do it after? Am I going to do it when I get home? They start becoming a little more strategic, and then it becomes really powerful.
Oh, I love that. I love all of those points. And for those of you who don't know, a lot of the early studies with Muse shows that 10 minutes a day of our biofeedback sessions that train focused attention done over 30 days is where you feel the most sort of potent and powerful effects. But I will tell you that, boots on the ground, folks that are just coming into Muse often are like, I can't focus on anything for more than 1 minute. And so I'm someone who's like, I add a minute every day to something. So I'm so happy to hear that that's also where you start. And it's sort of almost, for me, getting them over the psychological hump of like not doing it right. It's like, yeah, you're doing it, you're learning. And that's the most important part. Alex, any tips from you for starting with Muse or neurotechnology in general?
I just want to echo a couple of key points that I think Michael raised and you reinforced. The first is transferring trust from myself to whatever it might be, right? So if an athlete's coming to work with me, there's a sense of, I value your opinion, I want to know what you think. And so it's my job to do what Michael did, which is say, look, I use this. This is something I do in my practice. I think this would help you. And providing a little bit of education and affirmation around the choice to engage with some form of technology, like a Muse or any other piece of technology that could help them be better. And I think the second piece is to make it as easy as possible for the athlete to get started. So oftentimes when we think about the changes people want to make when they come to a performance coach or a psychologist or anyone, they're thinking about big changes, right? I can't focus and I want to be able to focus 100% of the time. And the only way to get even remotely close to that is just one step at a time. And so if you can reduce the friction to getting started and think about, like Michael mentioned, and like you mentioned, 1 minute today, 2 minutes tomorrow, 3 minutes every day this week, 3 minutes 5 times this week, you can start to make it easier for someone to feel confident adopting it. And then what's critical is you want to reinforce that adoption of that behavior, right? You want to reward people for doing things correctly and help it feel like they're sort of stacking wins and becoming progressively more successful on their journey. And I find when you leverage those few things, people are really committed to sticking with it, and it becomes much easier to make the technology a part of what they do day to day.
Yeah, I love that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I kind of see it is you almost have this opportunity to start training with Muse in particular, where you're like, okay, I'm going to start with 3 minutes and build up to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. And then there's also, as Michael mentioned, timing with when you can put it on in moments of tension or before big games, and choosing these other moments to learn how to state shift and to build that emotional resiliency. And those are almost two separate training grounds for neurotechnology and for mental resilience. Any thoughts on that?
I think for me, I tend to view it all as sort of one integrated set of skills that you're then figuring out how and when you deploy them. But I think you're right that the use case or what brings someone to a particular set of skills is going to be totally individual, right? For one person, it might be confidence, difficulty focusing. Another person, it might be resilience and self-talk. And in each case, you might leverage the same principle or same tool to help, but you're going to come at it and educate from a different angle. So I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, I'll add that when we talk about resiliency, I think it's often done in response. So an event has happened and now you review it, versus create the event or understand an event is coming. A simple example is you have your normal morning routine. Well, today the organization has required you to do this meeting for 25 minutes. That will create a tension and a stress. No problem, because you are now preparing to help the athlete understand what the stress and response, and then get after it. Rather than, oh, well, how did it go? You can already start preparing for your session, if you will, moving forward. I just want to add one more thing because it piqued, because we talk about the technology. In our environment, one of the things we've had to address is the comparison of results. So I was this calm and you were this calm, and it's become a little bit of a competition, and really focusing them back to, but this is really an independent practice and it's about how you're doing it. There really can't be a comparison because your brain is different than his brain. This has been something that in a competitive environment within the team that we've had to make sure we address on a fairly regular basis.
That's a really great point. That's a really great point. I'd love to pause for a couple. We've got some Q&A, some questions in the chat. So Bradley Finn's writing in. He's got a background in PT and AT, sports psych, and clinical psych. He's running running a clinic in Western Colorado. The majority of my practice is trauma orientated, using hypnosis and MDR, beyond health and mindfulness, etc. I'm interested in combining performance modalities to enhance my trauma work. Can you talk about those orientations with your athletes, people, or experiences? So is there any trauma involved in some of your coaching? Maybe Michael?
Well, I'll start off by making sure to say I'm not a clinical psychologist. And quite frankly, in my department, we gear everything toward performance or around performance events. So I think these days, especially in my work, very careful to understand what is mental health versus what is performance. And anything on the mental health side, we work with professionals who are more suited and available to do that. Having said that, it can be pretty traumatic to miss a penalty kick when you're expected, or when a championship is on the line. But we couch that into performance and hope we can start to understand where the anxiety, where the hurt, where those things come from. And we do use meditation in that respect. We do a lot of visualization and reworking the event to see the positive side, and then to also reflect on what is the reality of this event. How is it really impacting you personally? We do a lot of writing and then talking through all of these things, but I would say the answers are always inside the clients. In general, I've had to do very little counseling. Most of the time they're able to, with some motivational interviewing, simply work through to find the answers themselves. That's not a great answer because I suspect the question is coming from somebody who's working with real traumatic, difficult experiences. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add, Alex? It's a little bit out of our fields, but I find that trauma, any topic, there's always going to be that in the background of any type of group. So yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts to add.
I don't have a ton to add. The one thing I'd put out there, and this is, by the way, like, Bradley, what an incredible background. So cool work you must be doing. Yeah, I think the key to me there, if you look at hypnosis or EMDR or other formal ways of thinking through trauma work, I'm trained as a psychologist, so I think about things like cognitive behavioral therapy or cognitive processing therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy. One of the core features there that comes up time and again is attention, right? And the avoidance or attention dynamic. And so if you're thinking about ways that you could sort of infuse some performance thinking into the way that you treat trauma, it might be starting with attention and the different ways people pay attention, whether it's narrow internal, broad external, flashlight, floodlight, lots of ways to conceptualize the ways that people think about attention. But I think that would be where I would start, with bringing some of that work into deeper trauma work. And of course, for many athletes, trauma is a part of their lived experience. And so in my work, I've had the opportunity to work with folks who have wanted to sort of sort through and work on traumatic experiences in the past. And I think attention still plays a key part in their recovery.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for those. I'm just scanning the questions and I noticed some themes here. So we're going to kind of do this in two parts. The first is, so Thomas talks about how he's always admired the tremendous mental resiliency of top athletes. Is there some innate disposition to handle that kind of pressure, or do you think everything is trainable? Is everything, can it be acquired? Alex is smiling. Maybe you got to respond.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my view is that everything is trainable. That really a lot of mindset work is really building a set of skills. And of course, people have natural predispositions to specific ways of training their mind or specific ways of being, right? Some people run a little bit hot, if you will, and are a little bit more anxious and nervous. Some people run a little bit cool and need a little bit more energy to warm up. But by and large, the skills you need to manage and perform under pressure are things that you can learn. Again, it's things like how you appraise a specific stressor, the way that you talk to yourself in those situations, learning to control your physiology a bit more. These are things like any other skill in sport you could practice repeatedly, and over time you'll get better and better at doing them. I think the challenge is it's often much harder to notice progress on things like mindset training. And so people tend to give up more quickly than they should. You wouldn't like go shoot 100 3-pointers, and then if you only made 10, be like, well, I'm never shooting again. You'd keep going and you try to get better and better. But that's the kind of pattern we often fall into with mindset training as well. It didn't feel great today, or it didn't work immediately, so therefore I shouldn't do it anymore. And I think if you get people who can persist with training the skills, all of these things are absolutely trainable.
I love that. Thank you. Anything to add, Michael?
Well, 100%, I would be on the trainable side of the equation. And simple examples just go down to, even I've done it several times during this. I'm aware that my heart might be beating a little faster. So taking a nice sigh kind of relieves some of that and brings me back into some focus and concentration. I didn't know that, say 20 years ago, right? So I learned, and now I'm more effective at not necessarily even sometimes consciously thinking, take this breath now, but it's just part of the practice starts happening. We joked a long time ago about put on your game face. And now, again, more study and more looking at this facial manipulation. I bring it up a second time because I think there's something to it in preparing yourself for the match. So the great athletes we see, in the past, I think we would have just attributed it to some sort of God-given talent. But while I believe God plays an important part on all that, there are also trainable aspects that I think they're doing that now we're really taking a closer look, studying and trying to really understand what can be done to make sure you do get up on that Olympic balance beam and follow through and live out your potential.
Yeah, thank you. We have quite a few questions of when you start. So let's say you open the Muse app, you want to get somebody started. Either they've fallen out and they want to get their head back in the game, or they're just starting with Muse. What is some of your go-to sessions in the Muse app? Do you have any that you use on repeat with athletes? Is there ones that you favor in particular? Michael, I think you might have, you've had 2 teams now use the Muse, is that correct?
Yeah. So we love Muse introductions or essentials. This was a quick training kind of very structured platform. That for me was a great entryway to meditation. I'd have to look at my cheat sheet, my paper, because it's all written up for me. That's taken a lot of intern hours to put together. But the other thing we've done is we made a decision with, and Muse was a great partner in helping us do this, is we produced 10 very specific meditations because we recognized there were environments that were advantageous to getting this done. For instance, being on a plane. And to be able to do a very specific guided meditation that would coach them through recovery before and after the game, before and after a loss, some affirmation meditation. So we really worked hard to kind of consider the specialized, I guess, portion of what our players might be facing. And then in our introduction, I mentioned the essentials, but then we also move around between breathing and heart and really try to just give them wide exposure. If you listen close enough, you can start to understand what the athlete's trying to get at and direct them to, the extensive library that Muse provides. I would just, some of them, we do find some players who don't like guided meditations at all. They want to just do it on their own and not they find the guided sometimes distraction. And then we have others who just love the guided. They love being coached along through the phase. So you got to really listen to the athlete.
Yeah, that's such, and audio sensitivity is so real right now. I find that some people come in and really love even doing a basic biofeedback session. There's like an immersive rainforest sound that they might enjoy, or there's a very, very minimal audio in the body with like cave drippings. And those are, that preference is really, has really come up quite often. But I'm glad you mentioned the program. I was just actually looking at the LA Galaxy program on the Muse app. And for those of you who are joining and don't know, we often will pair with businesses or coaches to really pull out and tease out from our 10-year history of programming some program that's unique to you and will service your clients, that will service whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish. And that's been really successful, particularly in sports teams, because the lifestyle, as you mentioned, is so important. And taking that into account, not just training sort of pre-game, but being able to use Muse as a lifestyle tool has been really important. And Muse does a lot of work in order to create those programs. Alex, do you have any tips either with Muse specifically, apps you like, or just, getting started? How does one get started with neurotech? What is like the first or go-to sessions you'd want somebody to do?
I don't know that I have a go-to session per se, but I would say what I try to do is if you look at the way it's structured, and I also would need my app open, but I think it's like mind, heart, body, right? You look at the different places. And for me, I'm trying to listen to the athlete and hear what resonates for them or what might be a place that they would feel most inclined to kind of jump in. And so if you have an athlete who's maybe a little bit more spiritual, you might start with something like heart. If you have an athlete who's really into understanding how their brain works, you might start with something like mind. And I think it's really just about meeting the performer where they are and trying to find language that fits them and then sort of slot them into something and make that something easy for them to start. So there's no like right or wrong first session, good or bad, perfect first session. I don't believe in any of that. What I believe is the right first session is the one that you will sit there and do and try. And so I'm just trying to match each performer with whatever I think. And, it's a collective process, right? You go back and forth and talk about it. And that's how I decide where to begin.
Yeah, can I just say that I really appreciate that both of you have emphasized the individuality of the practices. I think that's really important because so much in this field, there's bars to meet, there's expectations, there's a lot of pressure. And just to hear coming from 2 leaders in the field with really sort of advanced knowledge of mental and emotional health, that it is really about individual effort and everybody has a really unique training. So thank you for that. We are going to wrap up. I do want to have a couple of announcements, but I do want to check any last words from Michael and Alex before before we go. We're really grateful to the community here. It's we have a big live audience, but this recording tends to go out for 6-8 months to those folks who are really interested in this field. So I can't thank you enough for being here, but let me know if you have any last words. Michael?
I mean, we could go on we really can. I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say. So I'm always willing to speak and help individuals. Muse has my permission to share my email and get in touch with me to answer any direct questions or set up time to chat to be more specific with anything. Always happy to help and love to see people achieve their goals and dreams.
Oh, that's so generous of you. Thank you. How about you, Alex?
Likewise, if I can be a good resource, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can learn more about what we're building at Momentum Labs at momentumlabs.coach. You can find me there. Emails on the website, comes directly to me. I answer every email I get. Would love to hear from you.
Oh, fantastic. We'll definitely include those in our after emails. Julia's going to pop in some relevant links in the chat, including a discount code for anybody who wants to get started with Muse. It'll be in the chat really shortly, and it'll be up for a few days to take advantage of a discount, a 15% discount on one of our devices to get started. And for anybody who is here, who is a coach, a clinic, a business, and wants to know how to integrate biofeedback, feel free to get in touch with me. I help coaches and clinicians and businesses help to integrate biofeedback. So you could be new to biofeedback. It could be something that you want to advance or amplify your current existing programs. Please do get in touch. I pop my email up there. And lastly, you guys get some dirt, some inside scoop. We've got some new and exciting metrics coming out soon. Not only do we have some new hardware that will include HRV and pulse oximetry coming out in 2025, but very shortly we will have alpha peaks available as a metric in the app. And what are alpha peaks? Oh my goodness. This to me is one of the bridge metrics that I think when I see what great work our research team is doing and has been doing with our research partners over the last 10 years, and where Muse is going in advanced health and helping people understand what cognitive health is, what mental and emotional health is. Alpha peaks to me is one of the metrics that's really going to be a bridge in that type of understanding. So I can't wait to tell you more about it. Drop me an email if you want to learn more, and have a look out on the app for alpha peaks coming soon. With that, I will thank everybody for joining us today. Again, the recording will come out in an email. Michael, Alex, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much again for sharing your insights, your passion, and your life's work with us.
Thanks for having me.
For having us, or me. Thank you for having me. I won't speak for Alex. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Fantastic.